Hi, everybody. I'm incoming Senate Majority Leader Kari Dziedzic. As Commissioner Showalter and Governor Walz stated, our projected $12 billion surplus is expected to grow to $17.6 billion. That puts Minnesota in an incredibly strong position to help Minnesotans in the upcoming legislative session. We listened to Minnesotans during the campaign. They told us they were tired of gridlock and inaction. Families and communities have real needs, and they want action. My caucus was very disappointed when people walked away from signed agreements at the end of last session. So starting in January, with this legislative trifecta, we will use this tremendous opportunity to help Minnesotans afford their lives. We won't walk away. We were elected to lead, and we will get things done. That means doing the hard work to finding agreement where it exists and producing a bold, balanced budget that will keep our economy strong, help families and workers, and keep Minnesota as a national leader in so many areas. We're here to lead. We plan to be creative and strategic and look at a number of issues to help working Minnesotans afford their lives, keep our families safe, and our schools strong, and take action to help the climate. With this projected surplus, the Senate DFL is ready to get to work in January on behalf of Minnesotans. We're ready to tackle the challenges facing kids, families, workers, seniors, and our communities, so all Minnesotans can succeed. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I am incoming Majority Leader Jamie Long, and I'm joined here by incoming Majority Whip Athena Hollins. And we just came off the campaign trail, and we heard loud and clear from Minnesotans their concerns for their families, for their neighbors, and their communities. Minnesotans want a state that works better for everyone. They want a legislature that delivers instead of getting mired in gridlock. Just as important, Minnesotans delivered a message about what they don't want. Minnesotans don't want to cut taxes for the rich at the expense of fully funding our public schools. Minnesotans don't want drug companies to be able to charge exorbitant prices, and Minnesotans don't think that politicians should interfere in their personal private decisions. Minnesotans have given us a tremendous privilege by electing only the second trifecta in the past 40 years in this state. And now this projected budget surplus means we can respond to Minnesotans' needs and deliver results. Far too many Minnesotans are living paycheck to paycheck. We are in the midst of a housing crisis in our state. Schools are laying off teachers and staff. Employers of all sizes are facing hiring challenges and asking for support with childcare, transportation, and workforce needs. Too many workers still have to choose between a paycheck or taking time to care for themselves or their families. Farmers and entire communities are already suffering from the impacts of climate change. The challenges we face are real, but there are real solutions too. It's not too much to ask to have the prosperity in this surplus be shared equitably. The priorities of Minnesotans have in the recent years been held up by gridlock, but now Minnesotans can expect this trifecta to take big, bold action that helps them afford their lives. We know Minnesotans need this trifecta to deliver, so we plan to hit the ground running in the first week of session. Our members are ready to get started introducing bills. Committee chairs are ready to get started holding public hearings. This is an exciting time for our state. Hard work is ahead, but this trifecta is united around the core values we share with Minnesotans, and we're ready to achieve big things. And with that, we're happy to take any questions.
Since we have a House member up there, the House was a little lukewarm about rebate checks. The governor made it clear he wants them quickly. Have Democrats in the legislature warmed to the idea of rebate checks?
So we just had our very first caucus retreat over the weekend, and we have a caucus that has 20% new legislators in it in the Minnesota House. So we haven't gotten to the point in time where we're making budget decisions yet, but we certainly respect the governor's proposal to us. We'll certainly take it back and consider it within caucus, but we don't have a decision to announce at this point.
I might get
Senator?
the same answer for this question for both of the leaders.
Yeah, could you take the same question? Rebates, how do you feel about them?
I also respect Governor Walz's choices, and we have 14 new members, and we have not had a chance. We have our retreat this weekend, so we'll be discussing priorities in more detail this weekend. And, you know, he can propose his budget, and we will have a thorough conversation and probably some hearings on the issue.
I'm going to try again on this. It seems like Social Security tax cuts were never something that were particularly favored in the D caucuses, meaning elimination of the Social Security tax, so it applies to wealthy recipients as well as low income. But it seems like maybe y'all surrendered on that in the last end of the last session. Can you give me some sense, again, I know you haven't made decisions, but will that face resistance in your caucuses, or do you think that issue has been determined to go ahead with the total elimination?
Well, we have some members that came up. That was a discussion point on the caucus, on the campaign trail, so our caucus will have that discussion. Me personally, I'm on the record for having deep concerns about that. It's about $500 million a year. But as caucus leader, I will lead the discussion with our caucus, and we will make that decision jointly.
Sure. So we have a brand new tax chair, and Chair Aisha Gomez, and so I can't get ahead of our new chair. But what I will say is that I think it's fair to say that there are many in our caucus who do care strongly about this issue, and then there are many who have the same concerns that Senator Dziedzic said about the overall cost. And I'll say it's not just caucus members. The AARP was concerned about eliminating Social Security on the very wealthy, as Governor Walz said. So I think this will be a point of discussion for sure in our tax committee. Me personally, I share Senator Dziedzic's concerns. I think that if you eliminate the tax on the very wealthy, the very wealthiest in our state, as Governor Walz said, then that has a big impact on our budget, and it has a more limited impact on those individuals.
Can you say anything that came out of your retreat that was a clear priority for members, or, you know, at least kind of on a broad sense, you know, paid family leave potentially, things that the surplus will make more possible? Yeah,
absolutely. Well, I don't even think it needs to be out of our retreat. I think the last 4 years, what you've seen for the House majority is that we've been very consistent in the things that we've been passing that have gone over to the Senate to meet a quick death. So we're really excited now to have a partner in the Senate who's going to be able to work together on many of the priorities we share with the Senate and the governor. And you mentioned paid family medical leave. That was something the governor mentioned. That will certainly be a priority. We've talked about investment in K-12, fully funding education. Early care and learning is also a high priority for us. Investing in housing, investing in infrastructure are high priorities. Tackling climate change is a high priority. Making sure that we are protecting reproductive rights is a high priority. And I'll add democracy and trying to make sure that we have an excellent functioning democratic system in our state. So those are a few. I think that we've been very clear with Minnesotans on the priorities of the DFL House. And I think that everything I just mentioned has broad support and bipartisan support from the public. So we'll see if we can get broad and bipartisan support in the legislature. But I know that we'll be working hard on those priorities with the Senate.
Where are some of the places that you feel you can work with Republicans? Where's the most fertile ground for cooperation?
You want to take it first? So working with Republicans, I think that we do have a lot of areas where we can agree. I was on a panel last night with Republican legislative leaders, and Senator Duckworth mentioned that he is very interested in making sure that we're investing in affordable childcare. So I think that there are some areas where we're going to be able to agree, and I don't think we should assume that we're not going to get bipartisan agreement on the areas that we're working together. I think bipartisan agreements are also more stable over time, so if we can get those now, as I mentioned, this is our second trifecta in 40 years, so I don't think we should have any hubris that we're going to be in a perpetual trifecta. So I think we're going to be working hard with the minority, but I also think that the era of gridlock is over, and we have a trifecta now that the voters have delivered. We have the ability, I think, to move big things, and we're going to be really focused on what can help Minnesotans afford their lives when we know that many are still struggling.
And Senator, same question for you. Do you have anywhere in particular you think there would be fertile grounds for compromise with the GOP in the Senate where you have a one-seat majority?
I've worked closely with Senator Draheim on housing issues in the past. We all understand and agree that there's a crisis across the state. So how do we get people in housing? Stable housing leads to better education outcomes, better health outcomes, and better workforce outcomes. So I think we will, find agreement and figure out how we can help people get and stay in stable housing and help communities have stable housing across the state. Childcare, like Representative Long brought up, I think that is a big issue that we have found, and we heard on the campaign trail, and the Republicans have mentioned, how do we find and make sure that people can afford childcare? There's been broad support on childcare tax credit bills in the past. And then thought of another issue and kind of just left me, but we're going to continue to look for ways we can find agreement, because I think there are some areas where we can find agreement to help all Minnesotans.
Can you expectation set for the folks who tune in for the process or for the product and tune out for the process? Are they not going to figure out where the bulk of this surplus goes until April or May, or do you see areas that you could advance sooner where there's consensus, perhaps tax conformity or maybe the rebate checks or construction projects paid for with cash? Are those things potentially, could they happen sooner?
I met with Speaker Hortman last week, and so we are having those discussions on it. Should we move some things earlier than later and trying to figure out what that process looks like. And we're also looking at starting at the end of session and moving this way, so kind of flow charts of where everything is and what we need to do, because we do know, and we heard on the campaign trail, that there are some Minnesotans, like our economy is doing really well in this K-shaped economic recovery. Some Minnesotans are doing great and some of them are struggling, and we want to make sure that those that are struggling, that can't afford rent, that can't afford the food, so food shelf visits are up, can't find quality daycare, how can we help them and how can we help people fast?
Madam Leader, I suppose there are many of the unmet needs groups that are back here.
Yep, sorry.
That are salivating because you've got a humongous number here and you've got DFLers in charge. Is there so much money available that you're not going to have to say no very often?
We will be strategic and thoughtful, and as the governor said, we want to look at, are there ways that we can do things better? What is the best way to do this? I think we will be thoughtful, strategic, and figure out what's the best way to help Minnesotans and have a budget.
I'll just add that 18 billion is a big number for sure, but if you saw from the presentation, the vast majority of that is one time. And so if we're thinking about the ongoing structural surplus, and that's $6 billion a year roughly, but if you take inflation into account, that's about $5 billion a year. So we don't have the surplus that it might appear from a number like 18 billion on an ongoing basis. And $5 billion a year, when you're thinking about all the needs we face, certainly there will be more needs than we're able to meet with that amount of money. But I do think that we will be able to do some really remarkable things with this money to help Minnesotans and address some real needs.
Representative Long, climate chair. I've heard the word climate change in this room more than ever, probably at least in decades of watching these forecasts. How excited does that make you as kind of one of your top issues?
Boy, how much do I have to pay you for that question? Extremely excited. We have, I think, maybe for the first time, I don't know, historians can look this up, both a speaker and majority leader who were former energy chairs. But I think it's a priority for Minnesotans, and I think that's what we're reflecting. There was a Star Tribune poll that asked Minnesotans what their top issue was going into the election, and climate was a top 5 issue. This is something that Minnesotans are telling us that they care about and they want us to address. It was one of the biggest accomplishments of the trifecta in Congress to take bold action on climate change too. But they were only able to get to a place where they're going part of the way towards the commitments that President Biden has made internationally. So that really means that the states are going to be responsible for stepping up and taking a leadership role. And Governor Walz and I have worked really closely on a 100% clean energy bill together, which I think will be a part of our priorities as a caucus moving into this session.
Yeah, anything else specific besides that 100% clean energy that we could see?
Sure, boy, I would love to go deep on climate. So Governor Walz also mentioned electric vehicle infrastructure investment. We certainly need to have a match with the federal government for the infrastructure bill that they put out. We weren't able to get that done last year on a bipartisan basis, which means we're just leaving money on the table that we're not able to invest in the state in things like electric vehicle infrastructure. But there's also competitive grants, and when Governor Walz is talking about the 5th most diverse economy, we have really great jobs in clean energy sector. But now every state in the country is going to be coming out and competing for these jobs with the federal money that's available. So if we want to actually be the leaders in the next jobs in the clean energy economy, we need to keep innovating as a state. And that means investing in research, that means investing in deployment of solar energy, means making sure that we are keeping on the cutting edge of clean energy technology.
Representative Long. As the majority leader, and you used the word trifecta numerous times in your conversations today, so I know it's an important factor. Do you believe that you actually need to have a bonding bill and have the long-term capacity for debt versus doing one-time funding and actually just having a spending bill to get your priorities advanced on infrastructure and capital investment? One question. And then second, is Elon Musk's involvement in Twitter affecting your caucus's use of Twitter accounts?
I don't know that I have done a survey on the second question, but on the first question, I'll say that we have tremendous needs. We weren't able to get a bonding bill done over the last 2 years, and so I heard Representative Torkelson say on Almanac that 1.5 billion was the number that he had in mind, and so I'm hoping that we're able to do some large bonding bills. I don't think we're at a point yet where we're ready to make a decision on whether we're going alone or together, but I think that we have real needs and we have to do that work together this year. Maybe our last question.
Your position on that as well?
I know Senator Pappas, the bonding chair, has had numerous conversations with Representative Fooley in the House, the bonding chair, and I know they have, they're working on different options of what to do. I think we will be looking to pass a bonding bill, and then if that doesn't happen, we'll have those alternative discussions. But I know I have talked to Senator Pappas, and both of us are sickened, upset that, again, they walked away from an agreement at the end of the year and we didn't pass a bonding bill, because you look at it, all those projects that could have been moving forward since last May that are still sitting out there, and the costs are only going up. And so we want to pass a bonding bill to help the state. Last question.
Quick question. So you have a majority in both chambers and a giant surplus. Will this be the year that you can get a budget done on time and do it in a way that's transparent so the public can participate and not have the last minute sort of back and forth behind closed doors? I mean, is this a year when we can expect more transparency and on-time budgeting for the state?
Our goal is to get done on time, and our goal is to be transparent and have those hearings so that Minnesotans can participate throughout the whole session, that we will have hearings on a variety of topics.
I guess the only thing I'll add is that I think that divided government has forced an end of session, everything in high stakes negotiation, and I don't think we're going to need to be in that circumstance. I think that you're going to see things moving earlier. You're going to see things moving individually, and so I think this will be a session with a high level of transparency for the public and where we can be proud of the work we're doing together. So thank you all very much. Appreciate your time.
Can I get one more? We haven't heard from Whip Hollins. Could I bring her up? In light of the record amount of diversity coming into both the House and the Senate and your membership, what could we see in terms of diversity, equity, inclusion legislation getting at some of the gaps, achievement gap, ownership gap, you name it? Could you briefly address that?
Sure. Thank you for the question. Well, I think that we've really talked a lot about the things that were left on the table last year that addressed a ton of the equity questions that are at play. We know that we have deep disparities in almost every area that we're looking at, right? From housing, education, I mean, everything that you can think of, we absolutely need to invest in equity. And so that's going to be one of our top priorities, and we're really thinking about it in a more holistic way. So not specific bills that address equity necessarily, but making sure that's a part of our entire thought process and our work process as we go forward. And so part of that is working with our diverse members, making sure that they are represented across the entire spectrum of the work that we're doing within committees and in conference committees, presumably, so that we can get the best possible outcomes for all Minnesotans.